All right, everyone, thank you for joining me on the fourth lesson of this introduction to containers. Now, we have learned about the runtimes, we have learned about the ecosystem as a whole, and we have even learned to pull and run a container and even use it a little bit locally. But while this is all fun and all, we really want to do this with our own process. I mean, that's what you're really here for. And we're finally going to do that with our own process. Now, there are a lot of ways to build a container, but we're going to use Docker at the very beginning as it's one of the simplest and easiest ways to get started building containers. Docker also builds OCI compliant containers. That means an image built with Docker is going to be able to be run in other tools that utilize the OCI spec, like Cryo. And this is true of just about any container runtime that runs in Kubernetes. So if you build it with Docker, you should be able to run it in your Kubernetes cluster. I have a repository here with some demonstrations in it, and there's actually a lot more demos in it than what you're going to find in this video. But what we're going to focus on in this video is this bash script, because I wanted to show you that it's just a process, and that process can be anything, including a bash script. Now, let's build this container, build it around this bash script, and show you how to do it. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is to make a Docker file. This is going to be the base that we are going to build on. The Docker file is what Docker is going to use, and it has a list of instructions for Docker to follow. And it runs line by line, running the instructions for Docker. We're going to learn some of the very basic and easy commands, and that's what we're going to do. Now, because I'm running a bash script, I'm going to use bash. So the other cool thing that you can do with containers is you actually can build containers on top of other containers. So you don't have to start from scratch. You can actually build off of other people's work, and you can make your container in such a way other people can build off of your work. So this is one of the other awesome aspects of containers that's not as easy to do with something like a VM. Because I'm making one from bash, let's open up this Docker file. You're going to see that the very first line has the word from. From stands for what image you want to start from. You could start from scratch, and that's very painful. We're going to start from bash. Bash is a container somebody else made that supports bash. It's already containerized bash and given us the bash environment so we can use that. Now, as I said, Docker is going to run from, and it makes a layer on the file system with from. Now it's going to go to the second line and make a layer on the file system with that line. And you'll see that the word copy here, and I'm copying our bash script into the container. So copy takes 2 arguments, and it moves a file from your local system into the container. And it just happens to be this bash script. And then we have a third line. So there'll be a third layer in our container image. And this line merely states what the default entry command is for our container. So if you don't override this in the Docker command to run, it is going to run our bash script. Awesome. This is our container image. We can build a container image off of this. So let's do it. It's really simple to build a container, and all you have to do is run docker build and then give it the location of a Docker file. Now, if you don't name the file Docker file, you actually have to give it the name of the file as well. But if your file is called Docker file, you don't even have to give it the name, just the directory. Another good thing to do is to give it some sort of tag so it's easy to reference. I'm going to tag mine with my image, just so that I know it exists. All right, so let's look through the output of Docker build. As you can see here, Docker build actually built it in stages, as I was talking about these layers of the file system. Each of these commands was another layer. All right, well, that was pretty cool. Let's see if we can actually see our images. If you remember, the Docker images is going to list all of the images on our local machine. Look, there's my image. We have now built our very own image. Let's go ahead and run this. Oh no, it didn't work. who would have guessed that our bash script used curl? So now we are going to need to go in and actually install curl into our namespace, because curl doesn't exist there because it's completely isolated. Curl does exist on my local machine. Now, the bash image is based off of Alpine Linux, and because of that, we can use APK to install new packages. So let's go into our Docker file and add curl. All we're going to have to do is add a line here with run apk add no cache curl. And this is going to install curl into our file system. It's that easy. The run command, you can run just about anything you want in your container and modify the file system in that layer. And so in this layer, we're using APK, which is in the base bash image, to add the curl command. Note here, we could actually just copy curl into our image if we wanted to, but curl could depend on things, and this is what dependency managers do for us. And so you should just utilize the dependency manager that is with whatever base file system or base distribution you're using. This happens to be Alpine. Now, as a note here, there are base distributions for just about every major Linux distribution out there. So if you want Ubuntu, there's a one. There's actually several different types of Ubuntu ones with several different layers. If you want a Fedora one, there's one. If you want a Leap one, there's a container for that. There's a base container for that. All right, so we've added curl. Let's rebuild. And as you can see here, now our script actually runs to completion and our container works successfully. This is really cool, and we have now built our very own container. So now that you've made your own container, you might want to share it. So if you want to do that, if you want to share your work, if you've made something really cool and want to share it with the world, join me in the next lesson and we'll learn how to upload this to a repository, Docker Hub specifically, and share it with the world.